You're listening to Truth to Power Live with Dumisani Washington. Yes, everyone, Truth to Power Live with Dumisani Washington. I am your host, Dumisani Washington. Great to be with you on this Sunday, September 29th, 2024. We are coming just about the end of September. I'm making sure that all is in readiness. Everything is good to go. So forgive me if you see me a little bit distracted looking at my little screen here to my right, your left, to make sure that we are good. If you're not hearing me well, if you're there, just let me know. Shoot me out a little note, especially if you are on LinkedIn or on X. You can see it there. I'm trying to make sure that we're all good. For some reason, something seems like it's not actually happening. I'm not sure why that is. I think it might be because I am not on one of my platforms here. Okay. I think I see what the problem is here. It's probably not going to work. Let's see here if I can remove something else and get on the platform. Sure. All right. Let's see here. I'm making a little edit. I've never actually done this live before, so I just tried something and tried to add it on X. So if you weren't seeing it on X, you can probably see it now. So if you are seeing it on X there, I apologize. You missed the first few seconds. Didn't miss very much. But again, welcome to Truth to Power Live. We're doing this in Washington. 4 p.m. Eastern, we join you every day, every Sunday. So it is great to be with you on today. Again, this is episode 16. As you can see, we're going to eventually get into Ta-Nehisi Coates' latest book, a couple of excerpts and some commentary we have around that and why it is so important in this whole discussion where Israel is concerned. On our show each week, we talk about the Bible, music, politics, culture, the Black American community, current events, geopolitics, Israel, Africa, marriage, family, education, everything in between. We don't talk about all those things every week, but that's the breadth of the types of topics that we deal on Truth to Power Live. Again, and it's great to be with you. I want to start, a couple of things. So again, along with being a pastor and musician and the different roles that I play, I'm also the CEO and the founder of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. Every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, we have what's called the Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. It is usually hosted by our senior staff members, Joshua Washington and also Olga Mashre Washington. They will be hosting on tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, having a jam-packed show for you. Also a special guest who's going to be joining us. And so, joining them, I'll be joining after them, but there's a special guest, Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk, one of our dear friends and amazing journalist. We're going to be talking about Hezbollah, the decimation of Hezbollah, which we'll touch on here in a moment as well, and a couple of other things as well. There's also fundraising that IBSI is doing. You go to ibsi.org and find out more about that organization as well. Okay, TTP Live is the website here. You can go to ttplive.com, and you can find out more about the show. We stream on different platforms. For those of you who watch on YouTube, it's a brand new YouTube page, just a couple of months old. Not many subscribers because it is still new, and often we forget to remind people. So please, if you're on YouTube, go there, subscribe to TTP Live if you're there already. If not, go to ttplive.com. You'll see at the bottom of the page, there's a YouTube icon. There's another icon that's for Rumble. And of course, there's a Twitter or X icon. It's not streaming on X, but you can still like that page. So do us a favor, like that page, subscribe, and you can get more information about it as well. Also, there's a link that says all episodes on the ttplive.com website where you can do it and download them as a podcast. It is available on Apple Podcasts as well as others. It's not on Rumble. Not Rumble. It's not on Spotify at the moment. My staff is checking out why. We thought it was, but found out that it's not actually there. So we need to find out why that is. So again, I'm hoping you can hear me all right. I had to adjust the mic a little bit, do a couple of things a little bit differently here. So I think that we are good to go. It is good to know. I just learned something else here on the streaming that I can actually turn stuff off and on in real time there. So it's good to know. All right. So I want to, in order, I put the notes on there, and I try to do that when, especially on the platforms where you can see not just the title of each episode, but you can see some of the other topics that we may delve into. And we tried to do that this time. I want to start with with Israel and its decimation of the Hezbollah terrorist organization, which is part of the Islamic Republic of Iran. It has been nothing short of amazing. It has been somewhat breathtaking, amazingly, for Israel's enemies as well as supporters of Israel. Hearing from our Israeli friends that there's great jubilation and celebration in Israel as the entire leadership of Hezbollah, which I believe is Arabic for Party of God, was taken out completely over the past week or 10 days by the IDF. Just an amazing operation. I'm going to share a graphic here if I can do it. Islamic Republic of Iran is the #1 state sponsor of global terrorism and has been for decades, for about the 40 years almost, just about, that the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Ayatollah regime, has been in power since around 1979, more responsible for the deaths of Americans, Israelis, Syrians, Iraqis, Africans. Africa became the global eye of the terrorism storm a couple of years ago. If you go to ibsi.substack.com, our Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, our writings, we've discussed it several times. Find different articles on there, including things like Israel's enemies are Africa's enemies. We talk about that very often. And so not only is Iran the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, with Africa being the global eye of the terrorism storm, that means most of Iran's terrorist activity, especially over the last couple of years, has been happening in Africa. As a matter of fact, in Nigeria, for example, Iran has been training imams in part of their Shia radical, violent Islamic sect, sending them to Nigeria, all expenses paid, training them for years, and sending them to Iran to do this, and then sending them back to Nigeria. The same thing has been happening here. They have been picking out particularly African-American Muslims, training them, and then sending them back. They're in places like Michigan and other cities. Sometimes you'll see their videos. I recommend Memory, MEMRI. It is an organization that often, they pretty much what they do, they translate often from Arabic and other languages or Farsi into English, and with subtitles, they let you know what imams are saying in different places, what radical sect leaders are saying in different places. And so some of those different places are places like Dearborn, Michigan. And so what Israel is doing, when we say things like it's fighting on the front lines for the free world, this is exactly what we mean. Typified by the fact that here you have, or I should say illustrated by the fact that you have much of the Arabic world celebrating the fact that Israel is decimating Iran's terrorist network. Why? Because it has been a terror to the Arabic world as well. So, and we'll talk about the disconnect in terms of what's going on in the West. Not everyone in the West at all, but we are going to unpack that a little bit here. So again, congratulations, Mazel Tov, as our Jewish friends say, to the head of Israel, the prime minister, Bibi Netanyahu, the heads of the military, all these amazingly brave men and women fighting in terms of intelligence and all of those things. If October the 7th was just a dark a moment and just a real again the largest slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust, one day slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. Then over these last couple of days, it has been a pivot, if you will, in which Israel has exacted not just revenge on its enemies, but a real blow for liberty and freedom globally. Iran, much like the Third Reich of the Second World War and the Holocaust, has global aspirations, ladies and gentlemen. That make no mistake about it. They call Israel the little Satan, America the great Satan, and they have delusions of a global caliphate that they will control from the seat of Tehran. If they have to slaughter billions of people to do it, that's exactly what they want to do, including Muslims, Jews, Christians. They don't care at all. Yes, they are Shia Muslims, and they are at odds with the vast majority of the Islamic world, which are Sunni Muslims, and very much want to see them dead as much as they want to see Jews and Christians dead as well. Again, this is not a good, positive thing at all. This, in terms of who that regime is, what Israel did was, again, striking a blow for freedom. And as our Jewish brothers and sisters say, may they continue to go from strength to strength. I'm going to check something real quick here and make sure to do. Yep. All right, there we go. I have a little. I think we're good. So that's the first thing we want to do. We want to give a shout out to and much respect to Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces, the counterintelligence, Secret Service, all of those people working together to destroy Iran's terrorist network. Again, Iranians are rejoicing, Syrians are rejoicing, Lebanese are rejoicing, much of the Arabic world is rejoicing, Arabic Christian world, the Arabic Muslim world, as well as, of course, of Israel and most of us here in the West and the United States. So thank you, Israel, for what you're doing. And we know the job is not done. So may you go from strength to strength and finishing the job, right? So great. You all appreciate that. Continue to do what you're doing. Isn't it amazing that if Am Yisrael Chai, that means the people of Israel live, and you have Israel fighting on behalf of itself and the free world, that means that Am Yisrael Chai is good news for everyone who values freedom, who values true justice, religious freedom. Just, it is amazing, as we keep saying more and more. There was a tweet that I saw, I won't pull it up now, but it was in Arabic. It seemed like to be a valid one. Sometimes it's like fake accounts. But he was saying that all this time he's been an anti-Zionist, but now that he's seeing what Israel has done to Nasrallah and Hezbollah and this terrorist network of Iran, he said that, and how beneficial it even is to him as an Arab, he's starting to rethink all this anti-Israel stuff. In which it's amazing. Again, the much of the Arabic world, if you haven't seen, I won't share this either, but there's some video that went viral of them. I don't read Arabic or speak Arabic. There's a video of Bibi Netanyahu, different pictures of him, and it was a song in Arabic, and it was the caption was kind of praising Bibi for what he and leading Israel had done. So again, there's much jubilation in the Arab world. No, don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of anti-Semitism there, anti-Israel sentiment there, but the tide is turning, ladies and gentlemen, and this is a good thing. Like the Abraham Accords back of 2018 is when it was, if I'm not mistaken. The same thing, maybe 2020, during the Trump administration, like the Abraham Accords. I believe it was Jared Kushner who said what happened just now, what Israel just did, where Iran's terror network is concerned, is as important as the Abraham Accords once they came into being. So good news, and shout out to all of our Israeli brothers and sisters. All right. So the other thing that I talked about on last week, all of this is in some way connected to where Israel is concerned. Again, we don't talk about Israel every week on our show, but we do talk about it quite a bit when it comes, whether it's Christian Zionism, we deal with the scriptures in different areas and that type of thing. So today there's a theme here. There could be multiple ones, but we had to kind of pick and choose. We keep the show at around 60 minutes, sometimes a little bit more. They always have a lot to say. Sometimes we have to just roll it over to the next week. Last week, I mentioned, and I've mentioned this several times, a video that was produced. Actually, it was produced by a Christian ministry called Global Catalytic Ministries. But the video is of Iranian Christian women, leaders of the Christian church there in Iran, recording a video that is meant for other Christians in the Western world, especially the United States. I've shared it on my pages before. The Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, I believe, has shared it. The Global Catalytic Ministries is on social media. You can follow their page on X, I believe on YouTube as well. I haven't seen their website. I don't remember for sure, but I do have the branded video. So there's a couple of videos I want to share. I'm gonna load up it again. These are Iranian Christian women. They're speaking in Farsi. The subtitles are on the bottom. I'm going to read the subtitles a little bit. So if you're watching this on your screen, depending on the size of your screen, you can see it yourself. I don't want to be distracting. If it's just audio only, maybe you're listening to this as a podcast. That's the other reason why I'll be saying some of the words. So what we tried to do is bring the audio down, knowing that you can hear the person speaking in Farsi. If you speak Farsi, then you know what they're saying, and hopefully I'm not distracting you from what I'll be reading underneath. Each video is short. One's about 2 minutes, one's about 3 minutes. But I want us to hear. Now, the first one was recorded in 2022, shortly after Joe Biden's speech, in which he really came for the Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans and how they're a threat to democracy. And so they responded not just to that, but to that and other things that they had been concerned with. And in prayer, God put some things on their heart. So I'm going to share that here now. And then I'm going to be reading this. I'm trying to time it the right way to make sure that I can read it for you as well, so that we can kind of stay all together here. Right. So this is, let me make sure, message. I'm looking at my screen here. I'm looking at the other message here. Message 2, message. All right. So this is the first one. Again, 2022. They did a second one in 2023. They followed it up. But let's try the first one now. Again, these are Iranian Christian women who are leaders of the Iranian Christian church there, and they're speaking to the West, right? These are Christians in Iran under the brutal regime of the Ayatollahs, who no doubt they're celebrating the decimation of Hezbollah as well. And they're sending a message to us. So especially if you are a Christian in the West, and especially if you are a Christian in the United States, they're talking to you. Whether you're a pastor or a lay member, whoever you are, if you're not even a part of a specific church, but you consider yourself a follower of Jesus, a follower of Yeshua, you are someone who considers yourself a Christian, then you really want to hear this. And I'm going to share this and again, try to read it with you here. I don't hear, hold on one second, please forgive me. I don't hear it at all, but I do see it. Why do I see it and not hear it? I'm not really sure what's happening just yet. Sorry. Okay, so if you see it there, my apologies. Somehow the sound was down. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and play it from the beginning. Salam, dear brothers and sisters in the West. We recently watched the speech by President Biden to the American people. It says, in his speech, he banged his fist angrily, it says. He said that the Democrats and Republicans are a threat to democracy, to their rule. 2 years ago, the Lord showed us the way that the persecution we live in with Iran is coming quickly to the United States and to the West. Dear friends, the words spoken by President Biden are almost identical to the things said by the Iranian government. They warn that we underground Christians are a great threat to Iran. They say we are a threat to the rule of law, even though we are ordinary people and families and law-abiding citizens. Jesus was very clear that the days are coming when the world will hate us and even kill us, believing they are serving God. We live with this kind of threat from the spirit of radical Islam. Although it is not through the spirit of Islam, the same evil spirit is growing presently in your own nations, talking to the West. The day when your own government treats ordinary citizens like a threat has arrived. Dear friends, please hear us. The final period of testing is coming quickly. Now is the hour for the Western Church to resolve in your hearts to stand firmly for Jesus, no matter what it costs you. Blessed are those with eyes to see and ears to hear. Thank you for listening. May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. What I was doing was reading there, and again, I apologize for that little stutter start there. But again, these are Iranian Christians who sent this message. This was 2022, again, shortly after the speech by Joe Biden. They even referenced it. These are not Americans. They're not Republicans. They're not Democrats. They don't have a dog in the political fight that is America. Yet they were prompted by at least two things to send that message to us. Number one, prayer. They have been praying for us here. And I've heard that many, many times. There are many Christians who suffer in some of the most religiously repressed areas of the country, of the world. And their prayer is often, among many other things, for us in the West, especially the United States. And I've heard this for decades since I was in college. Often what's prompting them is that they know how free we are and often how much of that freedom we take for granted. And I've never heard it in a dogmatic, or what's the word, dogmatic or condescending way, like, oh, you dumb Americans. But I've often heard it in a plea, right? A plea to actually hear. So that was what they were saying, the spirit in which they sent that. So they were saying that after the second thing that prompted other than prayer was after the speech by Joe Biden, in which he called supporters of Donald Trump, he said, a threat to democracy. He said, that's exactly what the Ayatollahs say about us. So again, the reason I say they don't have a dog in the fight, these are not MAGAs, right? They're not Trump, but they're not Americans, right? But they are watching and listening, and they're listening not just with their ears, but with their spirit. So I want to play the second one for you, right? Let's see if I can do it better this time. The second one, there's another video that they sent. These are Christians from Iran. They sent this second one about a year later, and I'm going to do the same thing. Again, it has subtitles. I'm going to try to read it for you, and at the same time, try to stay out of the way. Let's see if we can make this one work. This is the second video sent again by Iranian Christians to Christians in the West, especially to the United States. Hello and greeting, brothers and sisters of the West. Many of you have watched the film Sheep Among Wolves 2. I believe they produced it. That highlighted the story of the underground church in Iran and throughout the Middle East. Despite living under such oppressive Islamic government, not only do we continue to survive, we are thriving and growing faster than any church in the world, which is absolutely true. I want to share with you the main reasons for our success. First, Jesus said in John 15 that he is the vine and we are the branches. Unless you abide in me and I in you, you can do nothing. If you abide in me, you will bear much fruit. As the foundation of everything we do, we pray. We are a people of prayer, therefore we bear much fruit in the church in the West wants to bear much fruit. They must also, if they want to, they must also become a house of prayer. Second, Jesus said that if you love me, you will obey my commandments. Jesus commanded us not only to be his disciples, we have to take up their crosses every day, but also to make other disciples, it says. Yes, in Iran, we are making many disciples simply believing in Jesus. They said it's not enough. We must also take obedience to Jesus and making disciples. Third, the Lord said that we should bless Israel, and those who bless Israel are blessed, those who curse Israel are cursed, it says, and through Jesus, the King of Israel, all nations will be blessed. Believe it or not, here in Iran, the church loves and prays for Israel. Their words. We believe that God's promises to save them are true, and so we pray for the salvation of Israel. Fourth, everything we do knowing that Jesus is coming back soon, and we eagerly await his return and cry out, Maranatha, come Lord Jesus. We hasten his return. Finally, I want to say that the Lord has shown us that the persecution we experience here in the Middle East is coming to the United States, to Europe, and to the West. Now is the time for the church to prepare for what is coming. It is already at the door. If you would like to support the underground church through the ministry of GCM, Global Catalytic Ministries, if you want to join with us, or if you want more information, go to sheepamongwolves.world. Sheepamongwolves.world. Thank you, and God bless you.
و تعلیمات عالی که به ما دادن، چون از تعلیماتشون خیلی زیاد برکت گرفتیم. موفق باشید.
The second video that they sent about a year later outlined 4 things, 4 reasons. This is the Iranian Christian church, these are Christians in Iran praying for the Christians in the West, especially the United States. They outline 4 things that are the reason for their success. They're the fastest growing church community on the planet. That's true. And that has been true for the last couple of years. Of the persecution that happens in different parts of the world to the Christian people. Number 1 fastest growing church. I mean, regardless of whether it's persecution or not, but the number 1 fastest growing church community is in Iran. Isn't that amazing? Yes, it's in Iran, as well as other places where Christianity is being repressed, like Nigeria, right? Christians who are enslaved in places like Sudan. That's actually where the faith is actually growing. And this is, for those of you who are Christians, you know your scriptures, you know that that's always been the case. The more persecution, the more the church would multiply. So they say 4 different things. It's number 1, prayer. Number 2, obedience. Prayer meaning, you know, praying and seeking God, obedience to making disciples. Number 3, Israel. Third was Israel. Number 4 was it's escaping me right now. We believe that he's coming back. We preach and we remember and we cry out, Maranatha, come quickly, Lord Jesus. That third one, Israel, say that, believe it or not, it says, we love and pray for Israel. The Iranian people, that is a miraculous story in and of itself. We've talked about it with our Iranian Jewish friends and Christian friends. As a matter of fact, Lisa Daftari will be joining the Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America tomorrow with IBSI. You'll see it go to ibsi.com and you can get more information. Or if you want to know specifically about the Forum, ibsi.com/dates. The Iranian people have for decades resisted the brainwashing that coming from the Ayatollahs that would have them hate Israel, hate the Jewish people. They love Israel. They love the Jewish people. And they are a testament to the resilience of a people who've held on to faith, who've not allowed themselves to be duped by their leaders. Much of the Western world could learn so much from our Iranian brothers and sisters, whether they're Christian, Muslims, or Jews, because my goodness gracious, what they've been through and how they continue to move forward. So, 2, I'll say this last thing before we go to this Ta-Nehisi Coates thing. This was 2022 and 2023. 2 messages from Christians in Iran sent to Christians in the West, especially in the United States, among other things, warning, encouraging, what's the word else I want to look for? They are giving a solemn heads up, if you will, about the persecution coming our way. They've said now a couple of times officially, sending videos for our purpose. And you can see, it's amazing. They're wearing the hijabs. You can't see their faces. It's mandated that way in Iran because of the Ayatollahs. But I would imagine even if they weren't wearing the full veil, they would have had their faces blurred out, obviously, because they don't want to be identified. Because again, the church is persecuted. Christians are arrested, tortured, and killed in Iran. Yet the church is growing. They are warning us about what's coming to us. It'd be interesting. I've never met them before. I don't know who any of them are, but I would imagine that they may not be aware in any great detail of the type of disinformation being rammed down the throats of our college students here. sometime this week, IBSI will be publishing a piece, then one of the next ones coming up in the Africa Israel Weekly, entitled, or it's around making the case that strengthening Israel's relationship with the United States relationship with Israel, preserving that relationship, is a matter of national security. Part of the title is driven from Professor Jason Hill of DePaul, who has been persecuted for his stand for Israel just because he, as a black, he's from Jamaica, I believe it is, a black professor attacked racially for actually advocating things like Israel annexing Judea and Samaria. He actually wrote a piece in the Hill several years ago. His own faculty members turning on him. We'll mention that. We've written about it before. You go to ipsy.substack.com. But I was the first one I heard coin the phrase national security threat. America's colleges and universities, because of all this terrorist disinformation funded by places like Qatar and Saudi Arabia and China, unfortunately, have become national security threats. Our relationship as Americans, our solidarity with, our allyship with Israel, preserving that, and not, we'll make the case in the article, because isn't it amazing that as anti-Israel sentiment has grown in our society and on our campuses, so has anti-American, the communists, the Red-Green Alliance, as people like Dr. Zuhdi Jasser has talked about, the communists and the Islamists coming together for the destruction of this nation. This is a national security situation that we're dealing with now, which brings us to the latest book by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And let me see if I can pull it up here in the right way. I don't have the actual overlay of the book, but I do have a couple of articles that I'm going to read from. One of them comes from Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. It's titled Ta-Nehisi Coates Joins the Black4Palestine Deception. The timing could not be worse, right? One of the most popular writers within the Black social justice space. I'm going to quote from a couple of these articles in a moment. Well, these two articles. The other one is written by, I believe, David Christopher Kaufman of New York Post, and it is entitled Manipulative author Ta-Nehisi Coates' Dangerous Vision of Israel Without Jews. So this one is in the New York Post. I recommend highly you go check that one out. Check ours out as well. It's IPSY Substack again, so you can see that there. The title there, you'll see the title here for the other one as well on ipsy.substack.com. And we'll be following this up. We need to talk about this here for a moment, and the best way to do it is to actually, read a couple excerpts. So I'm going to go to, I had the honor of writing the one that's for IPSY, and I'm going to just read the first portion of it here right now. This is the Ta-Nehisi Coates one. As a matter of fact, this is the Substack one. So I'm going to read it, and maybe I can do this. Again, I'm still learning some stuff on here. Let's see. Can I do it this way? Boom, boom, boom. It's amazing because there's certain things I've learned to do and certain things I don't do it very well at all. I'm not really sure why. Okay, yeah, let me see. I'll read a little bit of it, then I'll move it out of the way. Quoting from the article that you see on the screen, with widely read books such as Between the World and Me and The Case for Reparations, Ta-Nehisi Coates is a well-known author within the Black social justice space. In his latest work, The Message, Coates delves into the Arab-Israeli conflict and further reveals the same flawed, ill-informed thinking that has characterized the KGB-imported Black4Palestine movement since its inception in the 1960s. I'm going to quote from Coates' website, right? Finally, in the books, this is a quote from the Coates website about his book. Finally, in the book's longest section, Coates travels to Palestine, where he sees with devastating clarity how easily we are misled by nationalist narratives, and the tragedy that lies in the clash between the stories we tell and the reality of life on the ground. Now, what I want to do is here, I'm going to continue to quote from it here, change this here. I'm going to continue to quote from this IPSY article. The most ironic part of this quote is that Coates is the one being misled by Arab nationalist narratives, the way so many Black American thinkers like him, before him, like James Baldwin, Malcolm X, and anti-Zionist turned Zionist Eldridge Cleaver. These pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel historical figures within the Black American political and intellectual class stood in stark contrast to the Israel/peace-supporting Dr. King, Bayard Rustin, and A. Philip Randolph. It is important to note that in the same way that Baldwin, Malcolm, and initially Cleaver got the Palestinian issue so wrong in the 1960s, Black people like Coates, Mark Lamont Hill, and Cornel West get it wrong today. And so that's the opening portion of the article that's there. And my focus, Ipsy's focus in that article is about the fact that not only does Coates get the Israeli-Palestinian conflict wrong by never citing the PLO, never dealing substantively with the Palestine Liberation Organization, with Hezbollah, with Hamas. He doesn't talk about the same way Mark Lamont Hill and Cornel West. If they do mention them, they mention them as freedom fighters, which is a bald-faced lie. These are Islamic jihadists who want the slaughter of all Jews, Christians, and Muslims who don't agree with them. They don't care anything about some sort of peace agreement, right? They're not freedom fighting for anybody. They're just trying to destroy everything, scorched earth. Not only does Coates not even address that, but we talked about the fact that it goes on to say he went to 3 different places in putting this book together. One was South Carolina, talk about the transatlantic slave trade. He went to Goree Island in Senegal, the whole Middle Pass of being the point of no return, or the door of no return, and how the Africans from the West Coast were brought here during the slave trade. And then, of course, he went to quote unquote Palestine. I mean, to Yad Vashem in Jerusalem and called it Palestine. Just abominable, right? So here, what we talk about is the fact that he traveled to those places. Not only is he wrong about that, but like Black Lives Matter, like the Dream Defenders that Mark Lamont Hill is a part of, and all these other Black4Palestine completely off the mark movements, they didn't travel to Nigeria and comment on Nigeria, where Boko Haram is slaughtering Christians and enslaving girls. Didn't travel to Sudan, north or south, but particularly north, in which the Sudanese Arab Muslims are still enslaving Christians and religious minorities there. Didn't travel there. Didn't travel to the other places throughout Africa in which Africans are being slaughtered or enslaved. No, he goes to Palestine and says, as a Black man, I stand with Palestine. Again, the same deception. So we break that down. We give you some links as well. So I want you to go check that out. I'm going to make some more comments, but I want to get to this other article. The other article written by a colleague, David Christopher Kaufman, who just happens to be a Black Jewish man. I checked out his article. He had sent it to several of us. You can see that on my feed on Twitter, on X. It's not on anything else yet in terms of Instagram or anything. So right now it's not there, but please check that out. Let me show you again the cover, or at least the title, so you can see it. Manipulative author Ta-Nehisi Coates, Dangerous Vision of Israel Without Jews. Our article deals with the hypocrisy of Ta-Nehisi Coates in terms of standing with quote unquote Palestine as a quote unquote Black man, and not even acknowledging, first getting that wrong, but also not even acknowledging what's going on in those regions where Christians are being slaughtered, where the Muslims are being slaughtered. He's not even dealing with any of that same Islamist mindset. But we say that also here, David Kaufman makes and it's a great article. Please check that out too. Let me read for you the New York Post article by David Kaufman. The opening part says, one sentence is all it takes to understand writer Ta-Nehisi Coates' views on Israel. Quote, on the last day of my trip to Palestine, I visited Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center, end quote. Coates writes as the lead of the final section of his new book, The Message. I'm continuing to read from the article. Israel, Coates apparently believes, does not exist and probably has no right to exist. How else to explain his situating a memorial of the destruction of European Jewry in some mythical place called Palestine, a country that has never existed, rather than in the very real state of Israel and its equally real capital, Jerusalem? I'm still reading the New York Post article by David Christopher Kaufman. And there's one in particular I wanted to drop down to, if I could. I'm going to another part of the section of the article. It says, quoting now from the article, with his new book, Coates has found limitless source material in the doom that has become the Palestinians. By his own admission, Coates had never been to Israel or Palestine before his 10-day journey last year that undergirds the message, which is the title of the article. Imagine a white writer parachuting into some African conflict to report on its past and present in the same manner. You can't, because it would never happen. His unfamiliarity with the region would be comical if it weren't so dangerous, both to the Israelis imperiled by Hamas and Hezbollah, along with the Gazans and Lebanese held hostage by their Islamist overlords. And yet, like so many today and before him, Coates blames the Jews. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot overstate this, so let's just pause for a moment. Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, The Message, and again, I say in the article that Ipsy produced, did not read it, just read the reviews, including comments that he, on his own website, they have made about the book, right? And then apparently David Christopher Kaufman of the New York Post did write. It's amazing. We know each other, but we didn't tag team on this. So Ipsy writes it from a very specific perspective, and then David writes it as a Black Jewish man from another perspective. And I would encourage you to read both of those articles, and you can share them. Please share them with your friends and colleagues. It's on LinkedIn pages as well. Ta-Nehisi Coates, spewing the same stuff. Again, I refer to the 1960s. The Black4Palestine movement coincided with the KGB formation of the Palestine Liberation Organization. They recruited Yasser Arafat in 1969. He heads it up, born and raised in Cairo. He's not a Palestinian any more than I am. And he goes and he is over this disinformation campaign. It is inspired by the Nazi movement to destroy the Jewish people. This has always been the case. He said himself, he was quoted in back in the 70s and 80s of just making the declaration that our goal is the annihilation of Israel. I talk about it in my book, Zionism in the Black Church. Right? So, but he sold it, the KGB sold it with him as a social justice movement. And the first most effective way that they did that was by aligning the PLO, aligning with Black civil rights leaders, both in the United States and then later on in South Africa, and in other liberation, quote unquote, movements that it sought to exploit and foment all kinds of problems. This was what the KGB did, and they used the PLO as well as their other liberation movements, the Black liberation theology. Yes, it was actually also born out of the KGB. I'm not saying that the gospel is not liberating. I'm not saying we're not supposed to speak truth to power. That's why this show exists. We're talking about manipulating situations, not for the purpose of freedom, not for the purpose of justice, but for the purpose of bringing in communist rule, Islamist rule, and oppressing the people even further. It's one of the most heinous things that can happen. Take someone who's already struggling, use their struggle for you to dominate them as their new overlord and make their lives even worse. That's who the PLO is. That's what Black liberation theology is. That's what Black Lives Matter is, and on and on and on and on. So, Ta-Nehisi Coates, this is not the first time he's done. About a year or two ago, he was on Democracy Now!, some other shows around the Gaza, Israel, maybe about a year ago, right? And he's talking about, oh, Israel is doing this, Israel is doing the same tropes, right? The same, just like he flew into Israel, stayed there for 10 days, called it Palestine, took the I would imagine the same tour that a lot of the Palestine, bent types of organizations taking. It came back, and now he's an expert, and now this needs to happen. And at some point, in David Kaufman's article in the New York Post, he even quotes as saying he's not even interested in hearing, quote unquote, both sides. He just feels this, and what I feel, right? It's all about feels, right? The problem for Coates's article isn't just it itself, not just because he's a popular writer, has millions of followers, and he does a lot of pop things as well. I told you Marvel Comics has worked with him. James Gunn of DC now, the DC universe, he's talking about Coates writing a Superman script. This guy is well known within this. If you don't know who he is, it's not so much you need to know about pop culture, but you need to be aware of it if you're concerned about this space. Ta-Nehisi Coates' book is the same, apparently, from the reviews that have been read and things that we've shared, the same anti-Israel, anti-Semitic drivel that has driven the Black4Palestine movement, which is a victimization movement from the 1960s till today. Very much in opposition to the Black Zionism movement, which is even older and substantive, both spiritual Zionism and political Zionism. W.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey. You're talking about Black leaders. Blyden, who was an African Pan-Africanist, who also talked about the inspiration of Zionism and what that meant for Black peoples, both in Africa and in the diaspora. That goes back over a century, right? So Coates' book is trafficking in the same anti-Zionism that is already embedded in Western progressive academia. Coates is reiterating the Israel hatred and the anti-Semitism that is already saturated within the Ivy Leagues, within many of our college system throughout, right? From the Ivy League to community colleges, much of the K through 12, especially the 8 through 12 public school system. No one knows this better than folks from California, which is where I'm from. I'm an educator and I'm from California. And California, I'm telling you, the fact that Kamala Harris is this close to going into the White House, coming out of California, which is in terms of its curriculum and its faculty and the kinds of things that have been going on for years at UC Davis and San Francisco State University and UCLA and Berkeley when it comes to the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic curriculum, faculty, you name it. No other state, in our opinion, in our humble opinion, no other state leads the anti-Zionist cause more than the state of California. This is systemic. And you need to understand the juxtaposition. Here you have Israel that has just decimated Hezbollah, the most lethal, the most prolific terrorist organization on the planet, which is controlled by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And may they go from strength to strength and wiping them all out. And Hamas in Gaza and the Islamic Jihad and the Houthis in Yemen and on and on and on, right? While that's happening, while much of the Arabic world is even celebrating with Israel, in the West, you have people like, I'm not going to share the video here because we don't have time to get into that as well, people who are marching hundreds, sometimes thousands deep, well, has been happening, especially since October 7th, before then, in favor of Hamas, in favor of Hezbollah, waving even ISIS flags and burning American flags. Our colleges and universities have been on fire since October the 9th, which was the first Monday after October the 7th, 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not going anywhere anytime soon. As the KGB defecting agent, he was Yuri Bezmenov said in those very, very famous interviews, he said, you're stuck with them now. They've been brainwashed. And the only thing that you can do to save your society is raise up another generation of patriotic Americans, because these, he said, most of them, you're never going to get them back. The ones that are burning the American flags, let me go further. The growing anti-Israel political right in our country, the isolationist right, like the Tucker Carlsons and the Candace Owens, who, though I would agree on them on some of the issues, many of the issues, right, we find common cause, that they keep singling out Israel. Candace is becoming a female Louis Farrakhan. This is really quite remarkable, the timing of it, because it's not just them as talking heads. It is what is seemingly a growing conservative and libertarian movement that sees not just problems in American foreign policy, and God knows there's lots of them, all kind of conflicts that we have no business being in, money flooding the places where we've been toppling governments for decades. I mean, we have a lot of blood on our hands, and we can agree on a lot of that stuff. But somehow, they're complaining about American foreign policy, it always dovetails into Israel. Israel is the real issue. All the Zionist regime and the Zionist control and all this is a growing sentiment seemingly on the right as well. So what you have is a younger populace who is more and more exposed to the same kind of protocols of the elders of Zionist stuff on the left and right, and a growing sentiment seemingly that the problems that America faces is because of either the Jews or because of Zionist Israel and how it keeps dragging us into these global conflicts. I mean, the fact that Israel is handling its business. Can I say, apparently the missiles, the bombs that Israel used to destroy the headquarters in Lebanon, the Hezbollah headquarters, were bombs of Israeli making. They manufactured them. It seems as though in large part because of the military relationship that they have with the United States. The Biden-Harris administration was unwilling to release certain munitions to Israel that was due them, that they'd already paid for. There's aid, we give military, yes, and they used that military aid to buy weapons from us. We would not send them, so they had their own and they use them their own. The Israelis going to handle their business. And those of us who know the word, he that keepeth Israel, neither slumbers nor sleeps. You have, as I said earlier, a couple of things. While Israel is neutralizing and eliminating murderers and terrorists, the United States is allowing them to cross our southern border into the hundreds of thousands. ICE released its own study a few days ago during the election and let us know of the tens of thousands of people who are convicted murderers, the rapists, the same thing that Trump said, that they're not sending their best. And Trump is such a racist. Nope, he's telling the truth. He wasn't being racist against people from Latin America. What he was saying was that they're emptying their jails and sending them across the border. Well, lo and behold, ICE confirmed that. Those of us with a brain already knew that, right? So while we are allowing terrorists and murderers in by the thousands, Israel is eliminating them. Again, one of these models is unsustainable. And while Israel is destroying Hezbollah, there are Americans on the street mourning for and protesting for Hezbollah. It would not be as lethal if these were just protesters on the street, but the sentiment that they are expressing is in our colleges, it's in our universities, it's in our public schools. Israel is the bad, is an oppressive, and the Jews are white, and they are colonial, imperialist, yada, yada. The kids are learning this for grade in school, along with America is bad, America founding fathers are bad, America needs to be destroyed. All of these things, this is what's happening systematically. The West is further devolving into this despotic, anti-Israel, anti-freedom mindset as it's coming in waves for our young people, funded by places like Qatar. Again, ISGAP, the organization, the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy. Go to isgap.com, I think it is. They produced several different studies, Charles Asher Small and his team. And one of the things that they had talked about was the fact that Qatar is operating a war chest of between $500 billion and $1 trillion. It's isgap.org if you want to see that, isgap.org. And the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel has actually cited those studies ourselves, and we've written articles about it. We actually did a couple of videos that cited them as well. You can check out the videos at ibsi.org. So Ta-Nehisi Coates' article, not just in and of itself, not just the deception that is Black4Palestine, that's always been a bogus movement. It's always been a far left movement that has never spoken for anything close to the majority of the African-American community, but it has persisted because it becomes a darling of leftist politics and ideology. Hatred for Israel, hatred for Jews as this Zionist foreign entity in the Middle East, and they came from Poland and they're not real Jews. All these lies, right? So they have to tell these lies to keep this moving, and that's what's been going on for decades. It's not just that he's a popular writer and wrote the book, it's the timing of it. The timing as Israel is turning the tide and winning this war against Islamist fascism, the despotism, the terrorism, the genocide. The West is more and more embracing it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you put all this together, I started with Israel decimating Hezbollah, Iranian terrorist regime, organization, We then looked at the video messages coming from the Iranian Christians, warning the West of that type of repression coming, for that persecution. They said is coming for you. They said the Lord showed us in visions that it's coming for you. We're praying for you. And then thirdly, as this is happening, this meaning the war ramping up, Israel pushing back, the Arab world rejoicing around the destruction of this Iranian terrorist network, the West further descending into Jew hatred, and one of the most popular younger African-American writers comes out with a new book about what? Palestine. About how, as a Black man, this is why he stands with Palestine, all kinds of deceptions, all kinds of hypocrisies. And again, what he's writing is already being taught in our school systems. It's already the dominating themes on TikTok. These young people are already being fed a healthy dose of Jew hatred, Israel hatred, anti-American sentiment. It's just already happening. So you add his substantive voice to this, and you see even more clearly the challenge that's here. Over the next several weeks, I'll be writing about it. It won't just be me. Both on my show, the Truth to Power Live, as well as on Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel's networks, we'll be making the case for the need for a national effort to strengthen the Israel-America bond and push back officially on this Israel hatred, which is tied to America hatred, which is destroying our country. Yeah. Israel, for years, has prioritized its relationship with the West and has seen things like fighting against the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against them as a matter of national security, and rightly so. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that much in the same way, American leaders, whether in the political sphere, the religious sphere, there has to be a recognition that the strength of our relationship with our closest ally, ideologically, especially in the Middle East and in the world, probably Israel, that those who hate Israel and are poisoning the minds of our young people and others through media and academia also hate the United States and are trying to destroy this country. And they're making a lot of headway. President Trump, you may never see this. I don't know, you, never met you. I'm saying to you, Mr. President, and those people that are with you, that if you should indeed enter the White House again for a second term in January 2025, I'm encouraging you, Mr. President, to make Israel's relationship with America a priority. And though it may sound self-serving, this is not what it is at all, as much as God has placed this on my heart. A chief element of that effort needs to be the pushback on the Black4Palestine movement and a movement towards education throughout the country that prioritizes Black American leaders. I'll make this case in an article, but let me say it right here publicly. The United States, if the White House is then occupied again by a person like Donald Trump, if Kamala Harris becomes the president, it still needs to happen, just not likely to happen from a White House perspective. But if Donald Trump enters the White House in January 25, if he wins this election, I'm not even talking about the election itself, just if he wins this election, one of the things that needs to happen is that this relationship, Israel and America's relationship, needs to be a priority. What I mean by priority, there's an education effort that needs to happen that has the White House backing to it, and chief in that actual effort has to be the actual education and connection with and empowering of Black leaders. And for those who might be scoffing, there's a reason why Israel's enemies for decades have targeted who? Black American leaders or Black African leaders. There's a reason why you Google Yasser Arafat's name and he's always standing next to somebody black. Jesse Jackson, Nelson Mandela, Louis Farrakhan. He always wants a photo op with someone black who, to whoever, represents freedom, justice, civil rights, who are the names I just called. I don't care what you think about them. That's not the point. This is how the PLO sold this as a fake justice movement. And this is what kids have been learning on campuses for decades. There needs to be a national effort to truly bring education. It has to come. It is a matter of national security. I'll say more about that in the coming days and weeks. But I'm going to have to stop there because I could keep going and going. Just wanted to share that part of it with you. For now, we'll share the other parts a little bit later on. Great to be with you, everyone, this week. As we are on every week, we'll be here together again, hopefully, again next Sunday. Looking forward to it. Bless you.
Truth to Power Live with Jimmy Study Washington.